Hey, what's up guys, TheJordude here, back again with another Shadowverse video. So they just released on the Shadowverse website and on their social medias on the upcoming changes that's going to happen to some of the more powerful cards in the meta at the moment. So these changes are going to happen on November 28th, so pretty much tomorrow from this recording. And we're going to be going over the changes that they have announced, and then I'm going to give my thoughts and review on the changes that they decided to make. So the first card that they are changing is Staircase to Paradise. I did call this. That's why we have Staircase to Paradise starred here, so we could get those vials, and I didn't have to liquefy the extras. But basically, Staircase to Paradise, they're changing it from 1 play point cost to 2. And then they're adjusting the countdown from 7 to 6. So basically, you can't play Staircase to Paradise on turn 1 and have it counting down. Then later on, like turn 5 or something, you draw 3 cards. So I believe the enhance is still 5. It didn't really specify on the site, but that's what I think it implies. The enhance is still 5. But yeah, I really do like this change. It was kind of a change that I recommended in one of my previous videos when I talked about Staircase to Paradise. And so making it cost 2 is actually really significant, because the decks that really abuse it, such as Lord Atomi, you can't just squeeze this in on an early turn so that you could cheese out Atomi on turn 3, turn 4. It's a lot harder to do with Paradise. And so if you can't cheese out, or if you can't play Paradise early on and then cheese out Atomi 3, 4, then draw 3 the next turn, then that's like really big deal, because now if you play Atomi early on but you didn't Paradise, they're able to deal with it. You can't refill your hand, you can't continue your gas. Another deck that's really affected by it is Neutral Force, because for Beauty and the Beast, you normally, to play Beauty and Beast on turn 6 and have all its effects met, so basically 5 cards in your hand and 3 of them being neutral, Staircase to Paradise helped reach that condition a lot of the times. So Beauty and the Beast kind of loses some of the consistency if you can't play Staircase to Paradise early on to get that card draw in before turn 6. So Lord Atomi and Beauty and Beast really affected by this change, because 1 and 2 play points is quite a big difference. Other decks that were hit is like the nerf PDK, but not too many people were playing PDK Dragon anyways after the nerfs, just a select few people, but that deck did get hit as well. Same as like Storm Ramp Dragon with the Queen Genesis Dragon combo. They also play Staircase of Paradise, so it's going to be interesting if they decide to still play it. Typically, I think Staircase of Paradise is a lot weaker now, so I do think it's a card that you could probably vial to get your vials back. If I'm wrong about this, you could always craft it back, but yeah, I think it's a safe one to vial away, just because the change is quite a big difference, and like it's really hard to abuse Staircase of Paradise now, especially with Atomi and Beauty and the Beast. The next card they are hitting is Little Soul Squasher. So this was a very powerful Shadow card, and Shadow gets nerfed a lot just because we got Bully Luna. Also, mid-range Shadow has been so good for so many formats. So Little Soul Squasher, the 2 play point 2/2, is now being changed to a 2/1, so basically it just loses 1 toughness, but it does make a difference, because 1 health, it dies to all the 1-drops now in the game, so 1/2s or 1/1s now kill Soul Squasher, so it kind of loses that tempo. Like Soul Squasher was really good because you often just play her as a vanilla 2/2, and that's pretty much the standard of 2-drops are, but because her effect is so powerful, she's just like an average card with really good upside. So I really like that they took down the toughness. They either had to take down the toughness or make her cost like 3 play points or something, 3 play points 2/2, just because she was just too strong as a 2-drop as itself. So she does have to be adjusted in some way, so that if she's a 2-drop, her stat line has to be below average, or she just has to cost more play points. Or cost more necro, but then 4 necro seems to be like the consistent cost for Shadow. So I do really like this change, just making it a 2/1, making it a lot, it's less of a tempo card. You can't really just play it turn 2 against like other aggro decks, or other aggro decks could just trade into it. So I think it's a lot more fair. I do think Soul Squash is still going to be played in shadow decks and mid-range shadow decks, so I don't really think it's going to be much of a card that you could vial away. Maybe she gets cut down to two copies played, but we'll see. I do think she's still a very strong card just because her effect is so powerful. So another card I have started here is Sybil of the Waterworm, and this is a card that I've been wanting to get nerfed for so long just because the look at the stat line. 5 play points, 6-7. Like the 6-7 stat line on its own for Sybil, just trade you definitely get 2-for-1s, but even times you even get 3-for-1s, and sometimes your opponent has to evolve their 5 drops to trade into the Sybil, and the Sybil trades into that completely after already evolving and trading. It's just like so disgusting. The 6-7, like, especially because I play a lot of Forest, right? They play Sybil evolve, then on my turn 5 I want to play Fina evolve, and Fina just dies to the Sybil. So I really like that they nerfed the stat line. Okay, first of all, they changed her stats from being a 4-5 to a 3-4, so when she evolves she becomes a 5-6, and that's the only thing she changed. But it's just such a big difference being at 5 attack and 6 attack at this cost on this around these turns. And then 7 health is so hard to deal with. So 5-6 I think is correct. I actually wouldn't even have mind if they changed this so that she only evolves into a 5-6 and then left her at a 4-5. I think that would have been a softer nerf, but they definitely hit her harder by making her a 3-4. But the main thing is that she evolves into a 5-6. Like, she does so much already as a legendary card. Like, you get a playing point pretty much every time when you play her, and you gain 3 life pretty much every time when you play her. So basically, she's just so good against. She makes Dragon viable against more aggressive decks because you play her, you gain life, she fights for the board well, and you get a play point. She just does way too much, and she makes Dragon like way too powerful and consistent against, and makes the matchups good against pretty much every matchup. So I really like how they make it a bit weaker, and then now aggro decks have a chance when people play Sybil on curve. So is she a card that you could vial away? Actually, I don't really think you can vial her away. You could if you really want the 3500, or if you have extra copies of her, or you bought the alternate art like I did, then I'm going to vial away my 4 copies of my original Sybil. But basically, I think she's still needed in Dragon decks because Dragons they do need that ramp. They do have Dragon Oracle, they do have Isla, but I still don't think that's not enough. They also have Fervor, but Fervor, when you play it on turn 5, you're not developing at the same time, so it's a bit weaker than playing Sybil on your turn 5 and gain a ramp. So I do think that Sybil is still very good in Dragon. It's kind of like how Ector is still good in mid-range Shadow. It's a lot less powerful, of course, but it's filling that space where the deck needs this sort of card. So I do think Sybil is still going to be a good card to play in Dragon. It's just a bit weaker, but still, you still need to play it. So if you have extras of her, then vial it, but then I do still think you probably play 3 copies of her in your Dragon deck. The next card they're changing is Karabos, Wicked Fairy. So they're only changing her from a 6-6 into a 5-5, and she evolves into a 7-7. So it's a really soft touch on her. I actually don't really think that when you evolve her into an 8-8, it's that big of a deal. I guess turn 6, if you just play her as a 6-6, like 5 and 6 is quite a bit different, but 7 and 8 really isn't that much different. But her effect is still the same, so I do think Karabos is still very powerful in Aggro Blood, Vengeance Blood, and I still think she's still going to get played just because of her fanfare effect. Gives you gas, gives you extra reach. Usually when you play Karabos, a lot of times you do evolve her, and then like I said, 7 and 8 I don't really think is that big of a difference. So I really think that Karabos is still going to be played in aggro decks, especially with that Sybil nerf, with the other nerfs we see, with Dimension Shift, as well as the nerf with Staircase of Paradise. I do still think that aggro Blood is going to be a strong deck, very powerful deck, especially after these nerfs, and so I do think you want to keep your Karabos. And the last card that's getting hit, and probably what everyone's been asking for a long time, just as long as like how people have been, even longer than what people were asking for Aegis to get nerfed. And I do have this card started as well, but I don't have extra copies, and that's Dimension Shift, of course. So they are making it cost from 18 to 20, so that to some people they might think, oh, you can still make it cost 0, but it's 18 to 20 is actually still a really big deal, because a lot of times when people get their D shift off on turn 7, which is usually when they have the nut draw, they play D shift on 7 and then they kill you by taking 2 turns or 2 or 3 turns. That's usually because they opened up with D shift, and if it's costing 2 more, if you think about it, usually when they play D shift on 7, they usually have just enough of the spell boost and just enough of the play points. So by boosting D shift to 20, that's turn 7 is very unlikely to probably almost impossible to play now. So with D shift being 1 or 2 turns later, that gives that deck, whenever you played against D shift and you're like, oh, I just had lethal the next turn, or I just need 1 more turn, then you're going to get that now with the changes to D shift. Is D shift going to be unplayable? I don't think so. I still think it's obviously still really good against slow metas and slow control decks. So I do think Dimension Shift is still a playable card. So I would probably still keep it, to be honest. So with these changes, I do think aggro decks are going to be the top of the meta, at least for the initial period of the changes. Decks like Aggro Forest did not get hit at all. Very powerful deck. I'm really liking Aggro Forest right now. So I think that's going to be wrecking people. Same as Aggro Dirt Runes, going to be a strong deck. And of course, Aggro Blood has always been strong after changes. Aggro Sword 2 might make a comeback. So I think in general, a lot of the aggro decks are going to come back, just because decks like Ramp Dragon got a bit weaker with the Sybil hit. Atomi got a bit weaker. D-Shift got a bit weaker. People might still be playing mid-range decks could also be really good. Stuff like mid-range Shadow, just because D-Shift got weaker, Dragons got weaker, so mid-range Shadow has better matchups now, and they're good against aggro. With the nerf to D-Shift, Control Blight could also make a comeback into the meta, just because people might not want to be playing D-Shift. Although, you might find a lot more D-Shifts actually on ladder, because people want to test it out to see if it's still good. So maybe in the initial period, Control Blight's probably not that good. But if it does go into that kind of like mid-range meta, as I was saying, like mid-range Shadow and stuff, then Control Blight could be pretty good. Every time I say OTK Roach is going to be like good after nerfs. However, I think this time I don't think OTK Roach can be that great, just because I do really think that aggro decks are going to be dominant after these changes. One more thing I wanted to point out is that if you plan on just playing in the rotation form, in the standard format, then the cards like D-Shift you might want to vial away now, just because you get the full value now. And then if you're just playing in standard, Dimension Shift of course won't be in the standard rotation, so you could vial away those cards, especially if you don't plan on playing unlimited. So that's it for this video. If you guys enjoyed, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below on what you think about these changes that the side games decided to make. So hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.